It's back to Canberra's Best Breakfast with Stephen Senatiempo.
23 minutes to 8 o'clock. A number of things to talk to my next guest about, but most importantly, a new report that shows a compelling debunking of the common accusation that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. There's a 311-page study by the Begin-Sadat Centre for Strategic Studies, which is an independent, non-partisan Israeli think tank. And it's based its finding on statistical facts rather than opinions, which is usually a pretty good place to start. To talk to us about this, we're joined by the co-CEO of the Executive Council of Australian Jury, Peter Wertheim. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
I want to get into this report in a moment, but I want to touch on something that I only became aware of because of a post on the Israeli ambassador's Instagram post, that the Israeli flag has been removed from the parade of flags down on the lake here in Canberra, and apparently not the first time.
Yes, I have no idea what's going on there, but it doesn't sound good on the surface of it. I believe the relevant authority that's in charge of the display is the National Capital Authority.
That's right, yeah.
So obviously an explanation is in order there. I mean, there might be some innocent explanation, but on the surface of it doesn't sound like it, because it's not the first time it's happened, and it's been, I believe, the flag has been interfered with in the past. So somebody's got to account for what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that's happened is another one of these so-called pro-Palestine rallies, this time provocatively on Bondi Beach. No question that it deliberately targeted at one of Australia's largest Jewish communities.
Absolutely. I was born and bred on Bondi. I grew up on the beach. It's an area with a very large Jewish population. The pro-Palestine protesters numbered about 100. They were vastly outnumbered by the pro-Israel protesters. There are about 1,000 of them. For the most part, it was peaceful. There was a scuffle for about 15 seconds, I believe, and of course violence is never justified. But I feel sorry for the police. They know and knew perfectly well that Bondi Beach had been targeted for two reasons by the pro-Palestine group. One was they try to appropriate our national symbols like the Harbour Bridge and Bondi Beach and so on to convey a sense that the whole of Australia is somehow on their side of the conflict, which is very far from the case. And the other reason, as you said, was because Bondi is an area with a very large concentration of Jewish residents, and it was a kind of in-your-face gesture. The trouble and the tension was not only predictable, it was predicted by the Mayor of Waverley and by community leaders and so on. So the police were left in an invidious position of having to sort this out, a protest that should never have been allowed to go ahead. And, I mean, they did a very good job, as they always do, but they should never have been put in that difficult circumstance in the first place.
And that's always the difficulty. Now, this report from the Begin-Sadat Centre, now, obviously, there'll be the typical, attempts to debunk this report because it's coming out of Israel, but they've used some pretty serious evidence here, including the amount of IDF armaments that have been used, the patterns of bombing, Hamas installations, etc. Anyone that's looked at this with any real critical eye knows that there's been no attempted genocide going on in Gaza, but this really is a definitive, the definitive evidence that Israel hasn't been trying to wipe out the Palestinian community.
Yes, look, it's a devastating rebuttal of that allegation, because they've taken a really forensic approach. They've looked at the definition to start with. They've seen that the key element of the definition of genocide is an intention to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial or religious group. They have then applied that with a very forensic eye to the actual circumstances in which the IDF has operated. They haven't taken this sort of broad brush, impressionistic approach that other organisations have, saying, oh, there's such a large number of deaths in this war, including civilian deaths, it must be genocide. Because if that were the case, every war would be a genocide, and that would just rob the whole concept of any significance. But they haven't done that. They've then gone through and looked at, operation by operation, particular incidents, looking at it as you would in any other alleged crime. And let's not forget, with any crime, the standard of proof, including international crimes, is beyond reasonable doubt. You've got to not only find the evidence, but you've got to prove it beyond reasonable doubt so that there's no other reasonable explanation for what's happened. And they have taken all of the internal records that are available of these Israeli operations in very forensic detail, operation by operation, and then found that there is absolutely no evidence of that element of intention having been fulfilled. That's not to say that the Israeli army has acted perfectly in every case. How could they? It's a war, and they've been critical of particular instances. And this is what makes the report so devastating. It's not a whitewash at all. They're very critical of certain operations that have been conducted. They've accused certain commanders of negligence and of going out of bounds. In some cases, they even said that potential war crimes have been committed, but not genocide. Yeah. The only party that you could plausibly say has committed genocide, the intention to destroy in whole or in part an ethnic group, is Hamas. Yeah. Now, you just have to look at what they did on October the 7th and what they said about it, in particular, that their intention is not only to dismantle Israel as a state, but also to drive out its Jewish population or kill them off. That is much, much more likely to fulfil the definition of genocide than anything Israel has done.
Peter, I wanted to raise that with you because that's something that has never been discussed since October 7, 2023, and that is these claims of genocide against the Palestinian population. As somebody that deals with the Jewish community here in Australia on a day-by-day basis as part of your job, how does it make a Holocaust survivor feel who were, that were definitely part of an attempt at genocide? Because there's no secret about it. The Nazis said exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to wipe out the Jewish population, as Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah and these organisations do. On a personal level, how does it make you feel to be accused, or the Israeli government being accused of the same thing that your people were actually subject to?
Well, I think that's part of the point of the propaganda war against Israel. Well, let's remember, every shooting war is accompanied by a propaganda war, and Hamas has comprehensively been defeated in the shooting war and should do the decent thing and surrender to spare its population further suffering, as any other defeated army would do. But no, they're not, because they feel that they're winning the propaganda war. And as you say, the part of that is to demoralise Jewish communities around the world, to try to get them to turn against Israel, which they are overwhelmingly not doing. I mean, there are always small numbers of people who we see in Australia and in other Western communities, Jewish communities, who will turn coat, as it were. But the vast majority, 99% of Jews understand what's at stake here and support Israel, and they are absolutely disgusted by these sort of claims comparing Israel with Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany had a very clear program of genocide. They rounded up the Jewish population, they put them in ghettos, and then they packed them into cattle trucks like sardines, took them to purpose-built extermination camps with gas chambers and crematoria, and got rid of them. Now, to compare a war of self-defence which Israel is fighting for its very survival, and that's according to Hamas itself, to a situation comparable to the Nazis is intended to be hurtful and demeaning, and to trivialise the agony that survivors went through who had to face the Nazi genocide. There is absolutely no comparison.
Not at all. And Peter, how widely do you think this report will be distributed? I mean, do you have any faith that the majority of the Australian media will actually pick up and start reporting on this?
Well, some media will. I mean, obviously, the Australian picked up on it and gave it a very prominent story by one of its top journalists. And there'll be other media like yourself who have drawn attention to it, but I'm quite sure it'll be buried deep by other media who who have taken the Palestinian side, or for reasons best known to themselves, don't want to publicise anything that is in Israel's favour. That's a great shame, because this report is a very compelling report, and it follows hard on the heels of another one by the so-called Genocide Scholars Association, where they passed one of those broad brush resolutions accusing Israel of genocide. But that was an organisation, it turns out, of 500 people, most of whom are not genocide scholars, and it was passed by 100 of their 500 members. And I think will be very quickly forgotten. They didn't have any debate. They didn't have it as they normally do, and they didn't have any discussion of it. It was just yet another one of those, I don't know how you call it, sort of like a lynch mob type of resolutions, where there's just one opinion, no discussion, no debate, and it's just imposed on everybody else. Yes. This study by the Begin-Sadat Centre is the exact opposite of that. It's so objective. It finds fault where fault is meant to be found, and where it's justified by the evidence, but it also comes up with some very clear conclusions based on the evidence that there is no suggestion of genocide or genocidal intent in Israel's war against Hamas.
Peter, wonderful to talk to you this morning. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Stephen.
Peter Wertheim, the co-CEO of the Executive Council of Australian Jury. I mean, the media coverage of is just disgraceful. Let's have a quick look at sport.